On average, nearly 20 people a minute are violently abused by an intimate partner in the United States. If you or anyone you know are in a violent or physically abusive relationship, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. There are professionals standing by 24/7 to help you. You are not alone.
Dad,
I'm not.
please, baby.
No, bitch. There ain't no baby now. There ain't no fucking baby now.
Dad, please, please. Please, please get off me. I can't breathe. I'm dying. I'm dying. Dad, baby. 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 Baby, stop.
What's going on, everybody? Anthony Tay with Tay Vision Media. Welcome to our second episode. We have the beautiful, the lovely, the ever so glamorous Hannah Aisha. Did I say that right?
Aisha.
Hannah Aisha. And I've known her for a while too, but I've never used her last name. Full disclaimer and full disclosure for this episode. If you saw the beginning, you know that it's going to be a little bit of a different episode than what you guys saw last time. But for the most part, we're going to try to keep it light, but also keep it honest and straight up. So this episode is going to really focus on being a survivor of domestic violence and being who I am and being, the things that I've experienced in life. I've seen a lot, but your situation, like, really, it was intense. And I think it was intense because of who it was. And like, I knew who it was and I knew him personally. And it really, it had a weird impact, like, on a lot of stuff, like, around me and a lot of stuff around you. And you kept me in the loop of a lot of stuff that was happening too. So, if you guys don't know, the gentleman who was part of this situation, his name was Jarrod Broussard. He was already in the media in, I think, 2018 or something like that, for that whole thing in Deep Ellum. If you guys are from Dallas, you know what I'm talking about. It was a pretty televised situation. But do you know a lot about that situation? I would assume you do. Yeah. So how did that, like, go from 2018? Like, what was your knowledge of that?
So Jarrod and I started dating when I was 19. He was 33. And so I'm 27 now. So it's 8 years ago. So 2016. So this happened, a couple years into us dating, and I woke up just like everybody else to a video of, circulating throughout Dallas. So it was a shock to me too.
Okay. How long had you known him before that? Or did you know him before that?
Yeah. So we started dating in 2016.
2016. Got it.
So we were 2 years, into a relationship when that happened.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't even realize he was, like, with his ex. That wasn't, I didn't know either. I was finding out just like everybody else.
Oh shit.
Day.
See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know y'all were together at that time.
Yeah. We were.
Okay.
So
had he, up until that point, like, had he shown you, like, that side of him, or was that new to you?
He definitely had. He was probably better able to talk himself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't living together at the time. And we had just started dating. I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
We were drinking a lot.
Yeah.
We both worked in nightlife. So it was just kind of a constant party. So he certainly had, but he would talk his way out of it pretty easily.
Yeah. What do you mean? Like, to you?
Did I know that he had been like that to me or to other people? Like,
had he shown you specifically that side of him?
Yeah.
Like, was he abusive to you at that point?
At that point, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, if you guys haven't seen the video, it was 2018. It was actually somewhat funny for a second. It's not funny what happened, but, like, he slipped and he fell as he tried to, like, hammer kick this chick in the head, which was crazy for a dude of his size. And anybody that knows him knows how big he is. And so it was, like, crazy for me to see that video. And so, like, a little bit of, like, my experience, or I guess, or like my background with him, is I worked with Jarrod at a club in Dallas for a little bit. Like we weren't like best friends or anything, but I knew who he was. And the way that we got linked up was me and my wife are in the lifestyle. They were in the lifestyle too at that moment. So I think they were. And so that's how we all got linked up. I think I knew of you at that point. I don't really think I knew you personally.
I just saw like pictures of me.
I think so.
I think we were friends on Instagram. It's just like social media.
Yeah, social media friends. But
yeah.
Yeah, but nothing like, you know, it's not like we went out or anything. It's not like I hung out with either of you or him at that point or anything like that. But it was just kind of like a gradual, like now we're all talking like in a group chat, or was it like Snapchat or some shit like that?
Yeah, it was like a group chat. Y'all were actually supposed to come over to our house like the week we broke up.
Yeah, no, okay. I remember that now. Awkward. I remember that. So 2016, y'all start dating, and he had already shown you a side of violence, and then 2018 hit, and then he went to jail. Right? He went to jail. How long was he in jail for?
10 months.
That was it?
That was it.
Why was it only 10 months? I know media had a lot to do with that, right? I feel
no. So he spent about $25,000 on a lawyer.
Okay.
And then he had been arrested before in the past for domestic violence, but nothing ever stuck because nobody ever showed up.
Like the victim never showed up?
They never showed up, right. And he had been arrested before with this same person from 2018.
Okay.
Plus 5 other people. So, I mean, there's a history of arrests, but nothing ever was charged because nobody ever came forward. The victims would just kind of, disappear when the time came.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
I feel like that's so common in domestic violence, though. I feel like I think it's maybe like more based on fear or something. Like, I don't know why somebody would get.
For him, it wasn't fear. He was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? He could be very charming, and he would keep a friendship with all of his exes. Like, he never really fell out. So he was pretty easily able to kind of talk his way back into people's lives, and they wanted him to be in his lives too.
Yeah, I can see that.
So it was pretty easy for him to skirt the system. So then fast forward to 2018, this happens and it's on video. And everybody in Dallas knows him already because he's a bouncer in Dallas.
Right.
So that goes crazy. He doesn't go to court for about a year and a half. So that's what you do. You drag it out to try to kind of calm the situation down. So finally the time comes, his ex testified for him in court. His mom testified. I testified.
Yeah.
We had a very strong case of this was just a one-time thing.
Sure.
And the judge believed him. The judge believed that he wasn't going to do it again. And she had originally sentenced him actually to 4 years, and she changed her plea, which his lawyer said he's never seen before in his time of practicing. But he changed his plea to 2 years, and then I think like 5 years probation and parole. Yeah. And so how prison works. Like you go and then you serve like 50% of the time.
Right.
So, and he already had time served too when he was originally arrested.
Got it.
So he was let out after 10 months. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so that whole time you guys were together, and I kind of know a little bit of like what I saw like social media wise, but you stayed with him. You guys bought a house, or you bought him a house or something?
I bought a house.
You bought a house. Okay.
I bought a house. He was still in prison.
Right.
And I bought a house out near my parents, and then he got out and obviously moved in.
Right.
We were living together before he went in. So,
obviously he was makes sense.
With me.
Yeah. So then he gets out. You guys commence your relationship and living together. And so when did he get out? He got out in.
So this happened 2018. He went to jail in like 2019, and then he got out
2020. So this was like around COVID,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So I bought my house March 2020, and then he got out May 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take us from May until the night of the event. Like, take us through like what it was like. Like, were there indicators? Were there moments where you were like, fuck, like I need to get out of this? Or were there moments where you were just like, what am I doing? Like, take us kind of through what that looked like for you. And like, maybe you can kind of like explain like what your reasoning was for like sticking around, I guess.
I mean, I think the indicators with domestic violence, they're always there, right? It's just, when do you realize it? When do you wake up to realize this isn't normal? And so I was aware, I was aware that the relationship wasn't the best. I had caught him cheating on me in jail. I mean, there was all kinds of...
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, he was cheating on me while he was in jail with the victim of his first case. So,
my mind went somewhere different. But go ahead, keep going.
maybe that too.
Okay.
Maybe that too. So it just wasn't a good relationship all around. But I think at that point, I was already so far into it. My parents thought he was like traveling for work. Like,
oh, they didn't know he was in jail.
We bought the house together. No. So It's like, I'm just so far into it. I'm like, let me try to make this work. And so he gets out in May 2020. I just bought this big, beautiful house with a pool, and so we're just kind of like living off that high. Like, I bought a house, we're going to go live this suburban lifestyle and everything's going to be great.
Right.
And it wasn't. It was far from it.
And that's what's crazy. I don't mean to cut you off, but that's what's crazy about like social media and the illusion of it. Right. Because like I was looking at it from both of y'all's perspective, like, man, y'all look like y'all are having the best fucking time. Like and that's what like, it wasn't like an allure, but that's what like, and I knew you guys were in the lifestyle. Like I would talk to Jarrod, while we were at work, and he would tell me what y'all would do and stuff like that. Like I knew it was like a reality. So I was like, that's cool. Like you guys are, and he got out, like we would talk, like we talked about guns and shit. Like he was asking me about his guns and stuff. Like,
he shouldn't have been having a gun, but
I know, but I think I can't. And I even bought one off him too. I think after he got out or before he went in, one of the two, I don't remember, but either way, like social media is so good at creating an illusion of like happiness when reality is like so far from it.
Yeah. And I think we had that conversation after we broke up, and you were like, oh my gosh, y'all looked so happy.
Yeah.
Like, I never would have thought. And
I was shocked.
I almost feel like unhealthy couples kind of portray that more online to try to like convince themselves
that part
that, everything is okay.
Yeah.
Because
no,
I feel
for
like,
sure. I agree.
mean, even looking at your marriage, you and Corey are so happy, and, everybody knows you're together. I don't feel like y'all feel the need to constantly be saying, oh, look how happy I am.
Yeah.
Look how happy I am.
Yeah.
And I think in our relationship, we did.
Yeah.
And that was probably what was feeding our relationship, is everybody, loved us together.
Yeah.
We were this couple that everybody knew, and, really that was far from the truth. So
that's crazy. And I think too, like, because I think a relationship and a marriage is private. Like, I think it should be that way. I don't think there's a problem with showing off your spouse or showing off your significant other, like, every once in a while. But it's like, because, like, with me and my wife, like, we go through shit just like everybody else does. I mean, I talked about it in my last podcast. Like, nobody's perfect, but it's crazy because I can always tell, like, who's not together anymore by, like, their social media, because they'll post some, like, cryptic posts on Instagram in their story, like, it's always some dumb shit too, like time to do me, I guess. And I'm like, okay, let me go to their social media and let me see. And that person's not there anymore. I'm like, well, they broke up.
For sure. I think that's also, people's cop out of not having to fully break up. It's just revenge posting on Instagram. Yeah. It's certainly a thing, but
So 2018, 2019, 2020, you guys move in together, you guys have this facade and everything's fine. But like, so you guys broke up when? I can't remember the day you guys broke up.
The incident happened August 21st, 2022. And I broke up with him 2 weeks before that.
Okay. I think I remember that.
Yeah. So we had been broken up for 2 weeks. And
You broke up with him?
I broke up with him. Yeah.
And what pushed you to do that?
I had found out his ex was coming into our house when I wasn't there. He was bringing her over while I was
like
there.
inside the home?
Inside the home.
Oh,
yeah.
Snap.
Her husband, found out something was up. Like she was disappearing, I guess, on a certain day at a certain time.
Yeah.
And he put a tracker on her car.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is a whole kind of crazy in and of itself. But it, turned out that she was coming over to his house or my house.
Ooh. Okay.
On Fridays when he wasn't working and when I was at work. So,
okay.
And there was multiple things, but that was just like the cherry on top. I was like, I'm done. I mean, it was an actual GPS with like coordinates. I mean, there was no denying it. He tried to, but there was no denying it.
Yeah.
So I was just done. I mean, I hadn't loved him, I don't think, for like a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah.
It had been a while. So I don't think it was that hard of a decision. What was hard was getting out. Because you can break up with somebody, right?
Sure.
But then you still have to get all your stuff. You have to either get them out of your house or get out of your house.
Yeah. It's not as easy as like 1, 2, 3.
So that's where I was at with that. During those 2 weeks I was just going to sell my house.
Yeah.
So I figured that was just the best way to get him out, get me out, and, just call it a day.
Right.
And so during those 2 weeks, I was sleeping on the couch. He was sleeping in the bed. And, there was points of it escalating. He had held me at knife point during those 2 weeks.
Like at home?
Yeah. So it certainly escalated. So I was trying to get out of the house.
Right.
Sorry.
No, take your time.
I was trying to just get away. I didn't think it was safe. So I was going to my friend's house in Fort Worth. I was staying with her. I had seen you.
Yeah.
We'd linked up for, what was it, like a Memorial Day pool party or something?
I think so.
Yeah. So I had just kind of gotten tired of like hopping around when I owned a home. Like I have a fully furnished house with all my stuff there. So I wanted to go back. So the night that everything happened, that was the day that I was with y'all at the Memorial Day pool party. And so Anthony knew that we had broken up, and I'd made him aware of that it had been violent.
Are you talking about me? Oh, you're
Yeah.
referring to me. Okay.
I'm referring to you.
I was like, is this me, Anthony,
Yes,
or is this
this
a different
is you,
Anthony? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so you had invited me to that pool party.
Yep.
That was like the first thing I'd ever done like outside of our relationship, and not even just like on a friend sense. Like I've never just like been out without
just like
him
hung
before.
out with people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I went, I had a great time. Then I was going to go home, and I told you I was going to go home.
Yeah, I'm going to pause you for a second because there's two things that I remember specifically. There was one was the overall shock of y'all breaking up, because I remember, and this is like a little side note, because I mentioned before that we were in the lifestyle, and I mentioned that here's what's crazy, right? And I'm gonna take it back just a small bit before we really get into it, because even after the Deep Ellum thing happened, like I am highly analytical. I look at things for what they are, not for what they seem.
Right.
Because I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to give people an option, a chance, a challenge almost to change or be different and not to be what I think it is. And so like, even when I saw with my own two eyes the violence that was portrayed through this man, I didn't believe that was a constant with him. I thought that was like
and he's very charismatic, and so that was really what would always draw people back in. Is he could always explain a situation, and a situation that you would think can't be explained, right?
That's crazy
like
that you put it that way, because even when he told me, I like was openly like, oh yeah, like I could see that.
Right.
Without even thinking,
like, why am I agreeing to
this?
this?
Without even being like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. And it had nothing to do with anything other than like empathy. I was just like, yeah, shit happens. People fuck up. Like, It is what it is. And then,
and to him, it was always a one-time thing that
Right.
just happened one time.
Right.
You know.
And then when we all started talking or whatever, like, because like you said, we had planned on coming over to y'all's house or whatever. And when you told me y'all broke up, I was like, what the fuck? Why'd y'all break up? And then you finally told me like everything that had been happening. I think y'all went to Austin or something like the week before that.
Oh, that was, yes.
But here's what's funny about the social media part. I thought y'all had a great time.
Right. When
And
in
then
reality,
you were like, no, I almost died. Like it was horrible.
It was
and I was
terrible.
like, shit.
Yeah.
So you meet up with us for the Memorial Day. And here, this is another thing that I never really spoke about out loud. Like when you were leaving, because after you had told me all that stuff, naturally my instinct kind of was like a little bit more alert, a little bit more aware. I was like, okay, like, are you sure it's safe to go home? Like, don't feel like you need to, like, you can chill here if you need to, sleep on the couch, whatever. And you were like, no, it's fine. Like, he's not home. Like, I have his location. Like, it's safe or whatever. But something in me was like really uneasy that night. And it was like, I was sleeping. I was here. I was home. I was sleeping and I was like, And then I woke up to, you know, the text messages that I got from your phone, which were clearly not you. The missed calls and shit like that. So anyways, you leave the hotel, we all leave, and you go home. So walk us through kind of like what that was like.
I go home. I mean, we left early. It was like 8 p.m. I think your boys were sick. Corey was sick.
Yes. It was like, I think we all left at like 9 something-ish.
Like it was early. And so I got home. He had been texting me.
Right.
I had been ignoring him for like 2 weeks. I just didn't text back. And so he'd been blowing up my phone. And like I said, I never did anything for myself before. I never went anywhere. Like I didn't have friends. So he knew something was off. Like I don't really just go hang out with people like that. So of course, you know, he thinks I'm cheating on him, just projecting onto me.
Well, you can't be cheating on somebody when you're not with them anymore.
Exactly.
But, sorry, go ahead.
So he's blowing up my phone. And I told him I didn't want to come home because I didn't feel safe. And so he said, check my location. I'm not even there. Like, that's it. It's done. Whatever. So I go home, and I like gotten some food and sat down to eat the food. And his location is still like, he's like at a bar in Rockwall somewhere.
Okay.
And I hear our garage door open and I'm like, what is that? And he comes like in through the garage. And at first, like he was just trying to talk. He was just trying to get me to like take him back. And I think he could just see it like I just did not care anymore.
Yeah. You disconnected at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So sorry. So we're kind of going back and forth. Just he's trying to get me back. I don't want to get back with him. And then he asked to look at my phone. And I didn't want him to look at my phone because I told you and I told my other friend, Nicole, what was going on.
Right.
I
remember.
Thanks. So he's thinking I don't want him to look at my phone because he thinks that I'm cheating on him.
Right.
Which, you know, if he sees that I'm telling you this or I'm telling my friend Nicole this, like that's going to also make him react. And so at this point, he's yelling and screaming at me to open my phone. I don't. And so he chokes me out the first time. And then from there, you know, I just remember gaining consciousness and he's just
Wait, like he put you out? Yeah. Where was this? Because you guys were in the house at this point.
Yeah, it was.
But where were you?
In the living room, like on the couch.
So he put you out
3 times.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. I lost consciousness 3 times. So that was the first time, and so I woke up, and he's like sitting on me, like physically sitting on me, and has my phone, and he's like trying to get into it, and he can't. And so he chokes me again, and like I'm about to pass out. So I think I convinced him to get off of me or something. And so at this point, the phone still isn't open. And so he grabs me around the neck, like in a chokehold, and drags me to our bedroom. And he sat on me, like sat on my face, and he was hitting me and choking me. He choked me out again on the floor, and I woke up, and then finally I opened my phone. So then at that point, he had seen that I was texting you. I think that's when he started like texting and calling you. And so, I mean, it just escalated from there. He was, you know, throwing me into walls, punching me, choking me out. Eventually I was able to, he was like chugging a bottle of vodka while this was all going on.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Very weird, but he was chugging a bottle of vodka. And so slowly, like, I was like, okay, he's going to lose, you know, he's not going to be fully aware. Like, I can just find my out. And so he had like walked around the corner from our kitchen to our bedroom. And the second he walked around the corner, I darted out the back door.
Yeah.
And so I was able to run to a neighbor's house, and they wouldn't let me in at first because they thought I was they thought that I was, I guess, what's it called? Tricking them. Like I was somebody was gonna be behind me and they were gonna like rob them or something, which is, it's valid.
Which is a valid response.
It was 3 a.m. Like
right.
It's very valid.
Right.
And so finally, I guess they see me and they see that, you know, I'm not kidding.
Right.
And so
had he come after you out the house at this point?
Yeah. So he was walking up and I was like, please, like, open the door. He's right there.
Yeah.
And so they did, and they brought me inside. And at that point, I think he saw like that they had opened the door, and so he knew he was fucked.
Yeah.
And so I think I called my mom, and then they called the cops. I called my mom. So the ambulance shows up, you know, takes me to the hospital.
Right.
And he barricaded himself in the house for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is like the caveat to this whole thing, because I know a lot of like, and this is unfortunately like the world that we live in, like the reality of the situation for a lot of people that will hear domestic violence that's her story, right? Like that's not his story, but this whole thing was caught on video.
Yeah, so that's like, the second part of it. So he barricaded himself in the house. Eventually, my dad was able to talk him out of the house.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the only thing that can make this worse is them shooting him dead in my house, you know?
Right.
I don't want anybody to be hurt.
Right.
But, you know, it could just escalate the situation. And they were ready to. Like, they had their guns out.
Yeah.
They were asking me the layout of my house because they were going to bust down the door and get him.
Yeah.
So he was able to get him out. I go to the hospital. A couple days later, I think I'm texting you, and I was like, oh my God. And you're like, what? And I was like, I have this on video.
Yeah. And so to back up just a little bit. So like that night, I got random text messages, and I knew it wasn't you. Like I knew it wasn't, but there was something. So two things, like with my background being, you know, in criminal justice and like being in law enforcement, like I know certain triggers and certain situations that will cause like an abuser to overreact. So I didn't want to fuel that fire. Like I didn't want to respond to it. And I was also
at that point, this all happened at like 2 to 3 a.m. when he was dragging me through the house.
Right.
And I think that's when he was like texting you off of my phone, because what had happened was he left his phone in his car at a hotel. So his location,
that's why you thought he was somewhere else.
Looked like he was somewhere else. And then his friend, our friend, unknowingly, like didn't know what he was dropping him off to go do. Dropped him off. And so that's why he was texting you off of my phone. Yeah.
And so I knew it wasn't you, so I didn't respond to it, but nothing in me was like, I don't know. Cause like, I feel like people in relationships like that will just, like, you guys know how to handle each other, like abusive or not. Like I don't know what went through my mind, but it wasn't what actually happened. And so I was just very like, when you called me or when you finally got your phone back,
I texted you like immediately because I was like, you're gonna be freaking out. You're gonna be calling the cops. Like my friend,
no, for sure,
Nicole, I had already told her like, this is what's going on. If anything seems weird, like call the cops. She called the cops that night.
Yeah.
And they had already shown up, but she had called. And then when you had saw the text, I think you had already saw my text saying like, hey, this is what happened.
Right.
Like he's in jail.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And then, so what were your injuries? They were pretty extensive too, I remember.
Yeah. So I had 4 fractured vertebrae, 2 brain bleeds. 4 fractured vertebrae and 2 brain bleeds.
And that was from, and like I said, this whole thing was like on video. And I've seen some shit in my life, but like I don't even think I got through the whole thing. I think I got through like, because I got them in clips. I got them in like a 5-minute clip, an 18-minute clip.
Yeah.
And then like the other clips of when he's like on the phone with the police and then your dad trying to talk him out.
It's like a whole other, other story. But yeah, I had, my whole face was black. I had bruises all over my body. Like even trying to go back to work a couple of weeks later, like, bruises only get worse.
Right.
So that was difficult, but.
And then something with your job too. Didn't they give you like grief for it almost?
So yeah, I was at a very toxic job at that time. So Rockwall County had put a restraining order, emergency restraining order on the 2 of us. And so they had asked me if I wanted my job included in the restraining order. And I said, yes, because he knows where I work.
Right.
And I had explicitly asked them, I said, is anything going to go to my job? And they said, no. And then the next day they delivered the protective order to my job stating that it was one of the protected locations.
Right.
And so, the whole time I'm trying to tell my job that this is a car accident because I don't want to say, hey, my boyfriend beat me up last weekend. Like, I'm not going to be at work for a couple weeks.
Right.
And so that was just the whole thing. I was trying to break into the medical field at the time. And so I'd been working for this doctor who was, he was just aggressive and toxic. And so he had gotten that information and it spread through the office and it just like having to go back to that wasn't fun.
I remember that was I had some thoughts about it, but I left it alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think, and thank God the criminal justice system prevailed and did what it had to do. And it really had to do with you following through. And that was my fear, to be honest with you. I was afraid that after everything was said and done, that you were gonna, find it in you to not be, because you're not a mean-spirited or spiteful person.
Right.
Like, you're a very sweet person, very like thoughtful. You think with your head, like you don't really lead with emotion. You can kind of process things. So I thought that you were going to find it in you to be like, we're going to drop the charges. And my fear was that was going to take the prosecution's case down a notch, because with somebody like that, who the rate of recidivism for domestic violence people is pretty high. Like, people will continue to commit those crimes. And so I was afraid that you were going to be like, I don't really want to, I don't want anything to do with it. I just want it to be done with. And then the prosecution or the DA was going to, they weren't going to have as strong of a case, but it really, it had to do with you not taking shit anymore. And I think, didn't he try to like plead out or something at one point, or didn't you try to, because I remember they were going to try to get him for life, right?
So they were going to try to get him for life. It's very hard to convince a jury to put somebody away for life.
Right.
He definitely had the history. There was an hour worth of footage of him, beating the shit out of me.
Yeah.
So it was a strong case, but what ended up happening was, I let him plead to 40 years.
Right.
Reason being is because I didn't want to sit through a week-long trial.
Yeah.
I had already been told what he was saying.
What do you mean?
Just about what happened and about why it happened.
What was he saying?
He was saying that I baited him to hit me.
Oh, repeatedly over and over?
Yeah.
Oh,
He said that I baited him to hit me, to go back to jail because I caught him cheating with his ex. So it was all like a ploy by me to send him back to jail, which is ridiculous, right? Like, it's not going to hold up in court.
No.
If anything, it's going to make him look like the idiot that he is. But it's just having to go and listen to that bullshit just really wasn't on my agenda.
Yeah.
You know, after I had handed over the footage and his bond was revoked, I really just didn't care to deal with it anymore.
Right.
Like, I certainly wanted him to be in jail, but I didn't want to sit there and have to listen to the shit that came out of his mouth.
Did you ever have to see him after he went away?
So yeah, I went while he pleaded guilty. I had the option to be there. He didn't look at me the entire time. But when I went to the courthouse, we were going to go to trial. Like, that was the plan, because they weren't giving a plea that was acceptable to us.
Right.
My DA, she was amazing. She had said, look, I won't take less than X amount of years.
Yeah.
She said, I want life. Like, that is what I want.
Right.
And I agreed. And then we got there that morning, and I guess he thought, like, he really thought that I was going to change my mind, right? Like, that I was going to, like, something in me just wasn't going to show up. I don't know what he thought, but I showed up to court that morning ready to go, and the DA came in and told me that he's offered 30 years, and I declined. She said, I countered 40. But how do you feel about that? She said, we can go to trial.
Right.
She said, and I can guarantee you that I'm going to get, you know, at least 40 years to life. She said, but the difference between 40 years and life, so life is 60.
Okay.
He got 40. Now, technically, you only have to serve half of the sentence. So the difference between 40 and 60 was actually 10.
Okay.
So he has to serve 20 years. Whereas with life, he would have to serve 30 years. Now, the chance of him getting let out on parole is very slim because of the history of the case, because of the video evidence, all of that. So when she explained it to me that way, I was like, why am I going to go and put myself through this if I don't have to? And so I think we countered 45, and he was willing to go to trial for 45. And so I gave him the 40.
Yeah, the criminal justice system is a finicky thing when it comes to this stuff. But I personally think, with my extensive knowledge of the criminal justice system, that was a good call.
Yeah.
When you had mentioned that the DA wanted life, I think my initial reaction was like, okay, I mean, that would have been tough. But also, too, I mean, you having to sit through a trial and like reliving that over and over again would have been a lot more mentally debilitating, I think, than just doing what you did. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Well, he has like a cult-like following too. That's the issue. So that day that I showed up in court, he had 4 exes. Like, we were all sequestered in separate rooms. I swear to God.
No, I believe you. I believe you.
And the 4 exes that were there were all there to testify for him, which holds no weight because they all have a case against him too, right?
Right.
But it's just like, do I really want to keep entertaining this? Because I've at that point I've moved on. Like, this is in my past, and I just don't feel like sitting here and rehashing something with somebody that's gonna go to prison for the rest of his life anyways.
Right. So. And I think too, I mean, one of the biggest notes that I think I'm going to step up on my end and speak on is, like, I know when I've heard people's testimony in the past, or like people talk about it, whether it be on podcasts or like the news or anything like that, a lot of people always focus a lot on the women and like, you should have gotten out sooner. Why'd you stay with them? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? So on and so forth. But it's like, I don't want to call it, I don't want to say this is a man's world, but when I say this is a man's world, I mean it in this way. It's like, as a man, how about you just don't fucking do that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, stop before it starts, and then nobody has to get out ahead of time. So it's like, and this is what drives me crazy about any sort of domestic violence dispute, man versus woman, woman versus man, I don't care. It's the lack of accountability for the action, because it is a remedial and it is a rudimentary response to a lack of ability to control your impulse and emotions.
Right.
And it drives me nuts that even after the fact, there was no accountability on his part.
No.
I was waiting, and it sucks to even say this too, because it's not like I wasn't pulling for him at all. I wasn't pulling for anything. I was hoping that he went away for a decent amount of time at least, but I just couldn't believe that there was no accountability for it. It was like, dude, you almost unalived somebody. Like, there's no, you can't go away from it.
He was me that night, and I
know.
Stand by that statement.
I know, and trust me when I say, like, that video is challenging to watch, and I couldn't even watch the whole thing, so I couldn't even imagine like living through it. You know?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that people want to ask, well, why didn't she leave? And it's like, well, they don't realize most domestic violence victims try to leave at least 10 times before they're killed or they're put in the hospital. So, people don't know what went on.
Right.
They think that they do.
Yeah.
And I think another hard part about it is people pass so much judgment.
Yes.
And the judgment was already there because of his first case, right? And I understand. I made a decision that other people usually wouldn't.
Sure.
But I was also with somebody that, wasn't your usual boyfriend, right? So as bad as he was also in my ear telling me other good things to try to make me stay.
Yeah.
But I think the hardest part about when it happened was just, I never publicly spoke about it. Like, this is the first time I've ever acknowledged it.
Right.
But it's like everybody already knew. Everybody was already in my business. And I remember I had one person that was friends with his ex, and she had told me, well, now you know what happens when you stay with somebody that hits people. And it's like, it's just, obviously people that are in domestically violent relationships, that they realize that they should have left. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
So that was tough.
And I think too, it's just, you said it earlier about how, a lot of people try to leave, but then, they don't, and then they end up either dead or in the hospital. And it's,
right.
I hope anybody that sees this or hears this, from my perspective, from a man's perspective, I will say that as a man, and this goes for women too, like if you're a woman who's abusive, this goes for you too, but it's typically men versus women. So I will say this, like, instead of worrying about why women don't leave, why women don't, make better choices and, that type of narrative,
right.
It's like, just don't fucking do it. Like, it's
right. Why isn't the judgment on him?
Right. And it's like, I understand that, like, there are some men that, and again, like you go into like the whole mental health crisis and like men's mental health and shit. It's like, there's still no excuse for, beating up on somebody because you don't get your way, or because you feel like you've been disrespected. Like, being a man is like learning how to manage and process your emotions and process your feelings in a way that is beneficial to those around you. And it's not creating this farce of like, well, you crossed me the wrong way, like you're going to get, you're going to get the business or whatever. It's like, you look like a fool. Like, that was where I lost all respect for him too, because it's like, even before that moment, after the Deep Ellum situation, like, it's not like I had a lot of respect for him, but I had a little bit. But then when I saw what happened, like on video, it's like, at that point, there's no respect to be had. It's like, how do you respect somebody who responds like a child to something that doesn't, it just requires you to walk away, like that's,
and I mean, I think it goes deeper than that. I mean, it's how you raise your children. I think his family is a big piece of why he is the way that he is. I mean, his mother knew that he had been violent to me before. Me and his mother had a fantastic relationship. I mean, we had a great friendship. but there was times that she would say, put Hannah on the phone. I want to make sure she's okay. So, you know, maybe that shouldn't be the resolution for that. Maybe it should be, why are you you know,
it's accountability.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Like, don't it's just as simple as that. Like, just don't fucking do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Proactive rather than reactive. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, is there anything you want to like, say as like a piece of advice, or like something for people that might, you know, be going through the same thing, that might not have the necessary tools to kind of like do what they need to do?
Yeah, I would probably tell them to, I mean, don't wait. I think everybody in that situation feels like they're trying to get like their ducks in a row before they leave. And you don't realize like you might not be able to do that at all. So just, you know, use the resources that you have and just get out of there. Yeah. Like for me, I just didn't want to sleep on my parents' couch, you know, which is fine. Like I love my parents, but it's like I'm a grown woman. So I was trying to figure out a different way to get out of that relationship that I could still, you know, take my home, take my stuff, not be living on somebody's couch. But I think it's important to just get out as soon as you can.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a very strong and powerful, you know, statement as far as, you know, put your pride and ego aside and understand that, like, you know, being, you know, on a friend's couch or being on your parents' couch or something, or even being in your car for a couple of days if you have to be, is much better than, you know, ending up debilitated or, you know, unalive. So, but yeah, so in the beginning of this episode, I put the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you or anybody that you know are experiencing something similar to this, or are you know somebody that's experiencing something similar to this, make sure you use your available resources to make sure that you keep yourself safe. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I know this was really hard, and you know, I appreciate you for agreeing to come on and speak about this. And but before I kind of end the episode, you're in a very happy relationship now.
I am.
And you're in a master's program.
I am. I'm in grad school. So I'm currently in grad school to get my master's in healthcare administration. I'm a practice manager for an orthopedic surgery center. So things have been going really well.
That's amazing. So light at the end of the tunnel for sure. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next month or next week, maybe, with another episode. Thank you guys.
Thanks.